When we speak of dematerializing the world, um, we should mention modern physics, starting with Einstein's theory of relativity, the equation of energy and matter in his famous formula, E equals mc squared. The world was already understood to be simply a transformation of energy, and energy being a poorly understood abstract concept of something that is able to do something, um, and able to make things happen. In Sanskrit, that word is Shakti, which can be translated as power or energy. And Tantric metaphysics says all of the world is a manifestation of that energy, Shakti, power. Now, which gets personified in Tantra as various goddesses. Now, why the personification? Well, there are a number of reasons and good psychological reasons for that. But one interesting way of looking at it is that when the so-called material world is viewed as a living, conscious being, goddess, if you will, then it emphasizes that idea that the world is not merely insensate matter as it appears, but is rather consciousness itself transformed into all these forms. Now, there is a method within the Tantras for dematerializing the world that doesn't require an understanding of quantum physics or relativity theory or any of the more abstruse scientific ways that the world gets materialized, for at least theoretically. And that is to recognize that our experience, our subjective experience of the world, occurs through 5 basic modalities, which we call the 5 senses. And the way that the order in which these senses are focused on, and thus the general picture of that we have of the world gets taken apart into its 5 components, starts with the sense of smell, which is considered the last evolute of consciousness. So if you're going to devolve the universe back into its source, you start with the last evolute, which is smell and things that can be perceived through the sense of smell. In Tantra, the poetics, this is termed earth, the earth element. But don't get hung up on this idea of elements. Element in the sense, not in the sense of modern physics, it's element in the sense of element of experience. So we have the smell element of experience. And what is behind the smell element experience? There is a mental process that makes that external sense organ able to perceive chemicals in the environment. But the real sense happens here in the mind. And behind the mind and that process is awareness. And so it's a progression from the smell itself, the actual experience of an odor, of a scent, to the mental process behind it, to the awareness behind that. The next step would be taste. The mental process, first the external, then the mental, then the awareness behind it. Then sight, touch, sound, then just mental content that's not associated with any immediate sensation, like imagination, memory. All of those things also have behind them pure awareness. Now, Carl Jung said that all experience is essentially psychological, by which he meant that what we think of as knowledge of the external world is really happening within our minds. And there's no getting outside of that, so to speak, in our ordinary mode of being. It's whatever experience we have is always filtered through that mind, which in Sanskrit is considered the sixth sense object, sense organ, the one that controls all of the other five. And we know if you take certain drugs or there's damage in the brain, then our perceptions get distorted or changed. So the simplest way to dematerialize the world is just to recognize that it's all a psychological state composed of these experiences broken down into each of the five senses, behind which there is a mental process, behind which there is awareness. And it's that shifting of attention from the external manifestation or experience possible through the five senses back to its origin in pure awareness that accomplishes the dematerialization of the world. Now, within the Tantras, there's an intermediate step, which is called Deification, where the psychophysical organism is given over to an archetypal energy, a deity, is transformed into that deity. Now, the symbolism of that, the value of that psychologically, is that there's a stepping out of the merely human physical being, physical, psychophysical, into a higher concept of individual being, beyond which there is this universal being of pure consciousness. And that's accomplished in a very specific visualization that's a bit too complicated to go into detail right here, but it's something we can talk about another time.